So with everything that's gone down in Dragon Ball Super, one of the big questions right now you gotta ask is, how good are Zamasu and Black as far as villains go in all of Dragon Ball? Because we've had quite a few villains in all of Dragon Ball, not just Z. We also had, you know, the Red Ribbon Army, King Piccolo in Dragon Ball, and then you go to Z, you had the Saiyans, Frieza, the androids, Cell, and Boo. But where do Black and Zamasu fare against all of them as far as being good villains? Because I'll definitely say without a shadow of a doubt, I feel as though Black and Zamasu are the best villains we've had thus far in Dragon Ball Super. I mean, you start off Beerus, he was a great and awesome introduction to the revival of Dragon Ball, but he turned out to not really be a villain. He was more so an antagonist, and he didn't really do anything to Earth. Then you go to Frieza's Resurrection, and Frieza returning was, you know, just basically a joke. He didn't really do much, and then the Universe 6 tournament didn't really have a defined villain. It was more so just like a tournament with a bunch of antagonists, but there wasn't really a clear-cut villain. So if you compare Black and Zamasu to them and everything that we've had thus far in Super, without a shadow of a doubt, it's honestly easy to say that Black and Zamasu are the best villains in Super, because they are truly villains in every definition of the word. I mean, if you just go back and look at some of the events and what they've done thus far, Black went back and in one timeline killed Goku's pretty much entire family, Chi-Chi, Goten, and I'm assuming Gohan, of course, as well. Then, of course, Zamasu killing his own teacher. Like, they are ruthless, they are bad, they are not good. They're similar to what you felt with Frieza and those villains in Z. And speaking of Z, let's talk about it. I mean, comparing Black and Zamasu, let's start off with the Saiyans. I feel as though Black and Zamasu have that same killer instinct that didn't give a shit. It wasn't wacky about them. There's nothing goofy about them. They're just plain old, you know, really bad guys. So I think if you look back, the Saiyans, okay, you know, they had a connection with Goku, and you find out about his heritage. So there was a pretty big importance there. Raditz, though, he kind of, you know, died off pretty quick. And then ultimately Vegeta became more so of a anti-hero, or, you know, he became a good guy nonetheless. So it's hard to really compare to these group of people when Raditz got killed pretty easily. I mean, don't get me wrong, cost Goku his life, but he died fairly early on in Z. Then, of course, you have, you know, Vegeta and Nappa. Nappa got his ass kicked pretty quick when Goku arrived, and then Vegeta, he became a hero, so it's hard to really compare there. But then you go to Frieza. I think Frieza still is definitely one of the best villains in all of Dragon Ball history. I mean, going to Dragon Ball is really hard to compare, because I feel as though Dragon Ball, as far as the writing goes, as far as the villains go, they were more so not necessarily complex, because Dragon Ball has always been a very simplistic story, but there was something different about the tone of villains in Dragon Ball. Like the Red Ribbon Army was just a bunch of power-hungry people that wanted to control the world using, you know, any means necessary. So the Red Ribbon Army, they were okay villains, but I mean, there was not too much to them. The best one there was Mercenary Tao, and Mercenary Tao was just like a hired assassin. And King Piccolo, he's definitely a great villain as well. So King Piccolo is one of the better villains in the Dragon Ball story. But then getting back to Z, so Frieza, I'm gonna put him on a pedestal here. Yeah, he's one of the best as far as the entirety of Dragon Ball goes. And we're not even going to talk about GT. We're not going to go there. We're not going to do that. No, we're going to leave GT alone. This is just going to be Dragon Ball Z, and Dragon Ball Super. Then if you wanted to compare Black and Zamasu to the androids ultimately, I would say probably the ones from Trunks' timeline were like, you know, really good villains. The ones in our timeline, they just didn't really give a shit. They were just doing whatever the hell they wanted. Like, especially 17, he didn't really care. 18 ends up with, you know, Krillin and stuff like that. So I would even say, and I would argue, and don't get me wrong, because I love the Android saga, I love the Cell saga, but again, if you look at what was accomplished by Black and Zamasu and you compare it to some of these people, yeah, the androids, they didn't accomplish as much as far as our timeline goes in comparison to Black and Zamasu. And then you jump to Cell. I mean, Cell, one of my favorite villains in Dragon Ball Z, and again, he's up on that pedestal as far as like one of the better villains. But comparing him to Black and Zamasu, where does he stand? The thing about Black and Zamasu that I like in comparison to some of the villains in Z like Cell is that Cell, his connection mainly to the Warriors is the fact that Dr. Gero created him, and Dr. Gero had a grudge against Goku because of, you know, the past, him defeating the Red Ribbon Army. So there was that connection, and of course there's, you know, actual DNA of Goku and the Z fighters inside of him. But that's pretty much the end of the connection. Cell doesn't really care about them as far as like, oh, the past and stuff like that. He just wants to be perfect. So his whole motif is just, you know, I want to be perfect. And as far as the moments go in the Cell saga and everything, like, it's no comparison on what actually occurred regarding the Cell saga in comparison to the Black and Zamasu stuff. We're only comparing them as villains and their menacing ways. And then if we're going to Majin Buu's connection really doesn't have anything to do with the Z Warriors, but more so with the Supreme Kai and those gods and stuff like that. So I would argue that Black and Zamasu, as far as menacing villains go, I would say that so far, especially Black, they're over Boo. And I know that's a big deal, and a lot of people are going to say, what are you talking about, this and that? I'm not comparing moments of what happened in the Boo saga. I'm only comparing Boo as a villain compared to Zamasu and Black. Which, to be fair, as far as accomplishments go, you got to think Kid Boo did accomplish destroying the entirety of Earth, and he was blowing up planet after planet, so he did accomplish a lot of shit in his day. But there's something about the complexities of Black and Zamasu. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not just comparing that the timeline is all loopy and stuff like that, but they went the extra mile to do things to really hurt the Z Warriors opposed to some of the other villains. Like Boo, he did it, I'm just a psychopath, I'm gonna destroy the Earth. Cell, I just want to play a game, let's have a tournament. The androids didn't really give too much of a fuck in our timeline. Frieza, definitely great without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, he would, he killed Bardock, he killed King Vegeta, he made Vegeta suffer, he made Vegeta cry, basically. So yeah, Frieza I'd still say way better. And then the Saiyans, again, I already explained that. So ultimately, I would say that Black and Zamasu, as far as comparing them to some of the villains from Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, I do think that they're, first of all, great villains, and I think that they're actually slowly becoming some of the better villains in all of the Dragon Ball story. Because again, comparing them to some of the other villains, I think they're better than the androids. I think to a certain degree, they're better than Boo, again to a certain degree, and I'm not comparing moments. And I'd even argue that they're kind of, in a way, more menacing than Cell, or at the very least Black anyway. So yeah, ultimately, as far as answering the question, are Zamasu and Black some of the greatest villains in all of Dragon Ball? I think they are. But let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your opinion. How do you feel regarding Black and Zamasu? In particular Black, because he's definitely the catalyst of all this. Do you feel as though they are some of the greatest villains in all of Dragon Ball after finding out everything they've done and their reasonings and what they ultimately hope to accomplish, and your overall thoughts of them as villains in general? But thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and stalk my Facebook to get more when the video ends. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.